V2PTE Academic. We are providing online PTE coaching and monthly practice test. You can also stay connected with us. Facebook, Instagram and Telegram. For more information visit our WhatsApp on given number. Subscribe our YouTube channel and press the bell icon for more updates.
Welcome to today's lesson. We are continuing with our study of taxonomy. Taxonomy is how scientists classify organisms into different groups based on the characteristics that they share. So for instance, a good way to think about taxonomy is the U.S. Postal Service. If we want to send a letter to someone, we first start off by addressing it to the nation they're in. By default, we usually assume that's America, but it doesn't have to be. It could be England or Costa Rica or Spain. You put their nation or their kingdom. Then within that kingdom, you address it to a slightly more specific level, their state. So for instance, South Carolina would be the same as a phylum. Then within that state, you would address it to their city, and then to their street number, the street they live on. Then you would address it to, say, their apartment complex, and within that complex, you'd address it by their last name to their family, and then finally their first name to the specific person you want to get it to. And in that way, we're able to weed out all the 400 million people we don't want to send our letter to in America and pinpoint the exact person we want the letter to reach.
V2PT
There's sugar in a lot of foods where you don't expect it. And of course, there's lots of sugar in donuts or ice cream or pastries or other things that are sweet, candy of course. But there are other places where you see it and you don't necessarily expect it. So as an example, peanut butter. Here's a list of ingredients from Skippy peanut butter, and you see that sugar is the second most common ingredient. Excuse me, you may know from reading food labels that these ingredients in any food label are listed in order of how much there is in the food itself. So sugar comes right after peanuts. Here's another example, beef stew. You wouldn't necessarily expect to find sugar in beef stew, but it's there. Now it's down the list of ingredients. It's actually toward the end. But if you look at the marketing of this and look at the can, it says there's fresh potatoes and carrots, but actually there's more sugar in this than there is carrots. And so you wouldn't eat something like beef stew and expect to find this to be the case.
V2PT.
But you can see from the relatively crooked and narrow streets of the city of Rome as they look from above today, you can see that, again, the city grew in a fairly ad hoc way, as I mentioned. It wasn't planned all at once. It just grew up over time, beginning in the 8th century BC. Now, this is interesting, because what we know about the Romans is when they left to their own devices and they could build the city from scratch, they didn't let it grow in an ad hoc way. They structured it in a very methodical way. That was basically based on military strategy and military planning. The Romans, they couldn't have conquered the world without obviously having a masterful military enterprise. And they were everywhere. They went on their various campaigns, their various military campaigns. They would build camps, and these camps were always laid out in a very geometrical plan along a grid, usually square or rectangular.
V2PT.
The history of software is, of course, very, very new. The whole IT industry is really only 67 years old, which is extraordinary. To be so close to the birth of a major new technology, a major new discipline, is quite remarkable given where we've got to in those 67 years. And the progression has been not so much a progression as a stampede, because Moore's law, the rapid expansion in the power of computing and the rapid fall of the cost of computing and storage and communications, has made it feasible for information technology to move into all sorts of areas of life that were never originally envisaged. What has happened is that there has been, as I said, a stampede for people to pick the low-hanging fruit. And that is what's guided the development of software and information technology over the past decades, and continues to do so, with a number of consequences that we will explore.
V2PT.
But Aristotle says the reason we need rhetoric is we have to be able to use it. To use rhetoric influence the ramble. We try to get them to understand truth. Truth is suggest. It's different than rhetoric. Rhetoric is the dressing, is the body, right? Truth is the spirit, is the soul, is abstract. It doesn't have a body. It's not particular. If you want to get somebody to the truth, you might have to use some kind of tricks, right? Because most of people are not sound and can see the truth. That's what we think. Most people are rambles, really. Only the educated, be erudite, are actually capable of seeing the truth. If you want to get the general mass there, you may have to do a little bit. So Aristotle, that is rhetoric. Rhetoric is something that is used to influence people, right? And it's kind of mentally promised a logic.
V2PT.
I'm just going to take on where Stafford left off. And the hormone I want to talk to you about is called melatonin. And it's synthesized in the pineal gland, which is a very small, it's the size of a pea in your brain. Descartes called it the seat of the soul, and it is where melatonin is made. Is this working? And it has a rhythm as well. And in a sense, it's the opposite of cortisol. It peaks at night. We call it the darkness hormone. In every species that we've studied, melatonin occurs at night. And it's a hormone that prepares you for the things that your species does at night. So, of course, in humans, we sleep. But animals like rodents, they're awake. So it's a hormone that is related to darkness behavior.
V2PT.
This course provides students with an in-depth understanding of the exciting disciplines of politics and international relations. Students will learn about the workings of political institutions in countries around the world and explore the complex field of relations between nations. Topics in governments, public policy, public administration, national security, and border control ensure that students receive a broad and current education in the range of issues which are covered under the label of politics and international relations. Students will undertake 4 compulsory units in 2 majors, one in politics and international relations and the other in governments and policy. They will also choose an elective major from a wide choice of options, including political communication, international studies, international business, and national security studies. In addition to acquiring specialist knowledge and competencies in politics and international relations and commerce, students will graduate with a range of generic skills such as critical thinking, enhanced communication abilities, problem solving, and strong capacities to work with others. They will also develop ethically based and socially responsible attitudes and behaviors.
V2PT.
So, what do we mean by well-being? Health, happiness, a sense of achievement and contentment, a state of mind and body where people can thrive. Well-being is not something that is purely limited to people who are facing extraordinary challenges in their lifestyle, health, or personal circumstances. Everybody here has a level of well-being. Music so often forms an intuitive part of our well-being management. Music to pick us up, music to calm us down, music to heal our sorrows. Our aim, through research, is to move from this level of intuitive application of music through to informed use in our communities, to take the next step in the understanding of the power of music in human life. Music already works for us on so many levels, whether it's soothing and teaching our infants, bringing people and communities together, adding spirit to our work and personal endeavours. But there is no reason to stop here.
V2PT.
As Joanne pointed out, only one country, tiny little Bhutan, wedged between China and India, has adopted the gross national happiness as the central index of government policy, and actually has had a good deal of success in education and in health and in economic growth and in environmental preservation, and they have a rather sophisticated way of measuring the effects of different policies on people's happiness. But they're the only country to go that far. But you're now beginning to get other countries interested enough to do kind of white paper policy analyses about whether happiness research, what effects would it have if we used it more for public policy. You're beginning to get countries like Australia, France, Great Britain that are considering publishing regular statistics on happiness. So it's beginning to become a subject of greater interest for policymakers and legislators in different advanced countries.
V2PT.
Haussmann's renovation of Paris was a vast public works program commissioned by Emperor Napoleon III and directed by his prefect of the Seine, Georges Eugene Haussmann, between 1853 and 1870. It included the demolition of crowded and unhealthy medieval neighborhoods, the building of wide avenues, parks and squares, the annexation of the suburbs surrounding Paris, and the construction of new sewers, fountains and aqueducts. Haussmann's work met with fierce opposition, and he was finally dismissed by Napoleon III in 1870, but work on his projects continued until 1927. The street plan and distinctive appearance of the center of Paris today is largely the result of Haussmann's renovation. In the middle of the 19th century, the center of Paris was overcrowded, dark, dangerous, and unhealthy. In 1845, the French social reformer Victor Considerant wrote, "Paris is an immense workshop of putrefaction, where misery, pestilence and sickness work in concert, where sunlight and air rarely penetrate. Paris is a terrible place where plants shrivel and perish, and where, of 7 small infants, 4 die during the course of the year." The street plan on the Taille de la Cite and in the neighborhood called the Quartier des Arcs between the Louvre and the Hôtel de Ville, city
V2PT.